We start today with major criminal justice news. We're talking about a criminal, now a convicted criminal, Proud Boy leader Enrique Tarrio, and this is really a big deal. This is a big deal not only because he has received the stiffest or longest sentence so far of anybody involved with the January 6th riots, although remember that Tarrio was actually not there on January 6th. He was there up until the day before. We will talk about that. This is also really important because of the message that hopefully it sends to those who are thinking about maybe doing something similar in 2024. And there are people thinking about doing something similar in 2024, either related to the election or the Trump criminal charges. We're going to talk about that in a moment as well. But first, the facts. Ex-Proud Boy leader Enrique Tarrio has been given a 22-year sentence. And this, again, is the longest so far for anyone even on the fringes of the January 6th riots. He was convicted of seditious conspiracy related to his efforts to disrupt the 2020 presidential election certification on January 6th. Of the 1,100 plus people who have so far been charged, and remember that for a while we said, well, it's a few hundred people or it's 700 people. It is now more than 1,100 people in connection with the Capitol riot. This is the longest sentence so far. Before he was sentenced, Tarrio expressed remorse, disavowed some of his prior statements, and of course, this is a story as old as courts are, which is the big, strong, burly men end up with tears in their eyes when it comes down to going to prison. And listen, I get it. I understand why they're ending up in tears, as Tarrio and so many of his other co-defendants did, because they are now facing decades locked up because of their completely harebrained stunts that they got themselves involved in. So I completely get it. He is now going to, I guess he will, with good behavior, he'd still have to serve roughly 85% of that sentence. My understanding from the people I talked to and the research I did is that at most a 15% shortening or reduction of the sentence would be possible with good behavior. And so now we get to, what does this mean, big picture, about the rioters, about the future of this sort of behavior and involvement? I seriously hope that the biggest effect of this is that every single MAGA nut who's thinking, oh, I don't know, depending on what they do to Trump in his trials, or depending on whether they steal it from Trump again in 2024, maybe I'll do something like this. Maybe I'll show up here, maybe I'll show up there, break a window, push a police officer. Hopefully this makes them think twice. This is not about saying your political views are being criminalized, because that is, of course, not what is happening. The theme, since we saw many of us together, you, me, and another 1.3 million people on that insane day, January 6, 2021. We all watched together as these people showed up and tried to prevent democracy from functioning. Hopefully, they now are realizing this is not a good idea. It is not a good idea to do this. Going to the slammer for 22 years to own the libs or whatever doesn't make any sense. Now, there is a question of whether Tarrio now has people who are proud of him, because remember, he did, apparently out of fear, apparently to try to reduce his prison sentence, he did disavow a whole bunch of the stuff that he said. So do you still become a martyr? Do you still get lionized when you end up disavowing some of the things that you said, even when it is transparently just to try to get your sentence reduced? I saw this, someone said online, you're going to prison for number 45, meaning president number 45, Trump, and you'll be getting out around the year 2045. And again, with good behavior, it might be more like 2040 or 2041 or something like that. Are you still a big, strong guy? if you cry and beg for mercy. And he had his mommy beg to the judge for him as well. Apparently his sister, he apparently has a fiance as well. I know a bunch of people wondering, how could you still have a fiance after what you did and now you're going to be away for 22 years? Apparently they all begged for mercy with tears in their eyes. It is good that people are being held accountable. And remember, I'm actually for law and order. I am sick and tired of the right wing. You know, when it was the Iraq War under George W. Bush, the right wing tried to take ownership of so-called patriotism. And it meant, oh, if you're not patriotic if you don't support the mission. Well, patriotism means we don't send troops into harm's way unless it is absolutely necessary and makes sense. It didn't, but they tried to get a monopoly on patriotism. And now they want a monopoly on law and order. They say, apparently, law and order means you lock up Hillary Clinton, even though there's not actually been any allegation made against her, never mind a criminal trial, never mind a conviction, never mind a sentencing. They talk about law and order, but they want Joe Biden locked up. They want Joe Biden impeached, even though they just can't quite get their arms around that witness, and they just don't have the tapes, and they lost the transcripts, and the USB drive was quite literally lost in the mail when Tucker Carlson obtained it, but they don't care. For them, law and order means lock that person up, lock up Hunter Biden, lock up whoever. Actual law and order support is what we want here. I don't go around saying lock this one up and lock that one up. What I say is if there is evidence of wrongdoing, bring it to a grand jury or convict depending on the or indict depending on the jurisdiction, and then give them due process. Enrique Tarrio got all of that. And so now we can say it is accountability to lock him up, not because he's a political enemy, not because I'm just picking his name out of a hat and saying lock this person up and getting a chant going saying lock them up. He has been given full due process. Now let's talk about the 2024 thing a little bit. Some of you over the last 24 hours sent me a Tim Pool tweet, I guess it is, or maybe now it's called a Zeet or an X. I don't know what it's called at this point. You know, the thing that used to be Twitter. And it said something along the lines of 2024 is going to be even more, even worse, or even more extreme than what happened on January 6, 2021. As I have said since that day, I don't hope that they do another riot, even if it would see 5,000 of them prosecuted rather than 1,000. I don't want that to happen again because it's humiliating to the United States. It imperils our democracy, and it doesn't give us anything positive at all. And I know that there are those on the right who say, oh, David, you and your ilk, the people in your audience, people like you just want to lock up people for their political beliefs. Find me a shred of evidence that I want to lock people up for their political beliefs. It applies to Trump. Oh, they want to lock Trump up because he had an opinion about the election. That's not in a single indictment. You can say whatever you want, but when you incite an insurrection, break windows, attack police officers, get fake electors to try to say, oh, we're going to give our electoral votes to Trump instead of Biden, strong-arm public officials. These are things the rioters and Trump did in their respective parts. It is no longer about speech. And so my hope is there's nothing like this in 2024. If Trump is actually elected in 2024, I will not even suggest that anyone physically stand in the way of him being inaugurated as president. I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening. But this is actual law and order. Don't let these right-wing nuts convince you they have a monopoly on it. They don't have a monopoly on law and order. They don't have a monopoly on free speech, quite the opposite. They certainly don't have a monopoly on patriotism, much as they would want. Let's next talk about what's happening with the 14th Amendment. Staying properly nourished is just so important to feeling your best every day. Our sponsor, AG1, makes it so simple. Just a single scoop of AG1 a day. You get 75 high-quality vitamins and probiotics from whole food sources. You're covered for the day. Half of Americans are deficient in vitamins A and C and magnesium. Not everybody has time to perfectly plan every meal. And I don't know that any of us want to be spending a whole bunch of money on endless different vitamins and supplements. AG1 just simplifies it and it's more cost effective. I take a single scoop of AG1 in the morning before my coffee. Tastes great with water, but you can mix it, quite frankly, into anything you want. With that one scoop, I'm covered for the day, getting everything I want. It's easy and it's a simple routine that works. Go to drinkag1.com/Pacman to get 5 free travel packs of AG1 plus a free 1-year supply of vitamin D. The link is down below.